Let's get to this week's Executive Spotlight. Madeline and David Ricci. Madeline and David Ricci are a dynamic entrepreneurial duo with an extraordinary track record in scaling, growing, and diversifying businesses. Renowned for their expertise in scaling businesses, the Riccis are more than investors and mentors, they're trailblazers. With a combined 50 years of corporate leadership within a Fortune 50 company, they bring strategic acumen to every endeavor.
Welcome to Office Hours. I'm David Meltzer, and it's time for our Executives Spotlight. I have two extraordinary executives, David and Madeline Ricci. Welcome to Office Hours.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
It's such a pleasure because you guys have had the same journey that I'd had. And the journey has not only been over time, the different experience of working in the corporate world per se to being an entrepreneur. And that has evolved over the years and what it takes skills-wise, knowledge-wise, and desire-wise in order to succeed in either of those realms. And now you've taken it to the next level where you're empowering others as trustedpreneurs in order to facilitate the understanding of how best to bring out not only our own better selves, but to impact others by aligned with my mission of making a lot of money, helping a lot of people, and having a lot of fun. What was, for both of you, the big lesson in that counterintuitive relationship, as I see it, between this stereotypical corporate world and this newfound unlimited world of being a trustedpreneur?
It started in 2008 after being in corporate of America for 18 years. And I had the unfortunate situation that I got laid off. So as you know,
You and half the country.
yeah, right. 2008 was when the mortgage industry did their thing. It crashed, and after 18 years of corporate, they just let me go. And so most people would be upset and sad, but to me, it was a blessing in disguise that I never look back from. And so, I had obviously David's support was incredible, and he was working for corporate as well. And he was he always makes sure that I was taken care of and that I didn't have to worry about a thing. And so when that happened, we had already looked into what was the possibility if it was going to happen, what we would do. And so we have found that there was a hole in the business that we were in corporate, and we decided to open our first business, which was BNN Services, which is it's a mobile closing service for real estate transactions and legal documents. We went nationwide without knowing a thing about it, but we figured it out along the way. We had blessings that we learned a lot in corporate, right? We learned processes, we learned management, we learned how to run a business, and they were paying us to do that. And so we took all those lessons and we transferred them into entrepreneurship. And from there, we went on into our second business, which it was a gym. It was actually a very edgy concept that we created in the boutique fitness studio 6 years ago. So that was a passion project for me, which it catapulted me into really, truly moving down a path of empowering others. I'm not really sure why that was a pull for me, but I felt that there was a huge need for women to be empowered, to be liberated for who they were. And so that's how we end up there.
David, before you answer, I'd said a quick insight. Obviously, 2008 was challenging for most people our age. I lost over $100 million, went bankrupt, and nobody could have told me at that moment that somehow was going to be the greatest blessing of being protected and promoted and loved, which is where I derived my own faith from moments like that in my life. And now I have so much of it. When things don't go as I think they should, I get excited because I know I'm not in control anymore. And it's a constant reminder of my faith. Before you answer the same question, I was more interested in your perspective. I know work very closely with my wife, and I love when she shares her perspective of my big lesson, because, you know, to lose that much money, in my perception, it wasn't hers. What was your perspective in 2008 when everything was falling, and now your best friend, your intimate partner, obviously had a great challenge, and you seem to have a very stabilizing attitude and perspective?
Yeah, so I've always said, you know, it was interesting. It wasn't hard for me to work with her pivot because prior to that, she was dabbling in all these little side hustles, and we knew it was in her to want to be um, in business for herself, and so that wasn't the challenge. The challenge was making sure that we launched it right. We did it differently than everybody else, right? So in that back then, part of the industry we were launching was usually done in somebody's garage. And we took the corporate route and we put ourselves in Class A buildings. We networked our systems. We did things, and really that was what I was doing. And I guess that was really the start for us to understand something later on that I'll touch on in the learning lesson. But to me, I think I went in a little naive too. Like, I'm in the same industry, but I'm not losing my job.
Right.
You know, I'm just at a different level, right? So I'm good, you know, and so I think that naiveness actually helped us believe that it's all good. And then literally in the first month we profited. And then right after that, we landed a client, which was the scariest moment because all of a sudden they had no processes. They've never done it before, and they were going to be nationwide. We had just started. We were not nationwide, and we didn't have staff. What do you do? So that's when we started really understanding we can actually work together. So we built out a process flow. We told them how we would manage it, and suddenly they literally put us on the map nationally. And I think to what you were saying, trust is the key word, right? We trusted ourselves, and I trusted her. And I think that's where the relationship really helped us, is because we didn't have fear. We just did. But that's a little bit of the corporate background too, right? And, you know, we were talking on one of our podcasts about, you know, leadership styles, right? And back then it was you either did or you didn't. And if you didn't, you weren't there. If you, right? And if you did and you didn't do it well, guess what? You weren't there. So we just went in with the idea that we were going to build a business, that we understood the need, and we were going to build it based on customer experience, not just customer service.
Right.
And once we did that, I think we just kept going. And she still is a great face to that business, right? And now today I kind of run the, you know, most of the day-to-day of that, but that's just how we built it. And it was just in trust.
And the lesson of this trustedpreneur that has evolved out of that has allowed you both to be not only strategic, but also integral in impacting and empowering others with the dummy tax that you've paid.
Yeah.
And so have I. And then more important, with a better mindset, heart set, and handset. In the context of branding Trustedpreneur as well, what are some of the key components or characteristics that you see when we talk about being a trustedpreneur?
For us being trustedpreneurs, and then for people to become trustedpreneurs, right? I believe if you've only had success, that's great. But understanding failure is only failure if you allow it to be failure and you didn't learn from it. So our biggest learning opportunity is when the fitness studio hit COVID. And it wasn't 100 million.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Everything's everything.
Right. But I mean, you know, this was over a $500,000 loss for us. And, you know, that's not something small businesses do, right? And you sit there and you're like, what do you do? Do you move on? Do you not move on? But what we learned, and we went back and we reflected, and I think this is the power of being trustedpreneurs, is we're willing to share the experiences. We're willing to help somebody navigate so they don't have to go through some of the things that we did. we went back and we reflected on every mistake we made. And, it's tough when you have one of your businesses that just, right? And then you think you can do that with the second one.
Yeah.
And a third one, right? And it's not that way. We did not have a good blueprint when we launched the fitness studio, and we had all these ideas, but we didn't pen it. We didn't really put it. And so, I always tell people, when you're doing a business plan, start with the exit strategy, because it's going to tell you exactly where you have to go. And so, to me, the Trustedpreneur concept came from, we wanted to help people not shortcut the experience, but maybe not have to go through every one of the challenges. There's other challenges that you want to go through,
Right.
and figuring out how do I scale, how do I grow. But the ones that cause what is the failure or the learning opportunities, we can help you prevent that.
And Madeline, you're redefining so many things within the context of that relationship of corporate and entrepreneur, scaling, scoping, really truly understanding business, not only redefining the leadership standards, but also gender. And I'm blessed to have 3 extraordinary entrepreneurial daughters, and which is why I created a fund specifically to fund women, especially women of color, the most underrepresented, undercapitalized genius that we have, especially in America. But you're an icon for me. You're someone that really has redefined those roles as a leader and as a woman. What are some of the things you still see for my daughters as challenges, as trustedpreneurs, that I want them to be, as you have redefined, but there's still a lot of work to do?
Yes, unfortunately, as strong as of a voice we are trying to stand, to have in that department, we still have the glass ceiling, specifically in the corporate world, right? Which is where my coaching, leadership coaching, it's focusing on. The ceilings still have yet to be broken, right? I believe that we have a better opportunity today because now we have to dust off the emotional intelligence books that we had 30 years ago and didn't really care about, because the approach was a little bit different. It was very autocratic kind of approach. Now, because our culture is changing, we need to change along with it. And so that traditional way of doing things is no longer effective, right? So it creates a really unique opportunity for us women to understand what emotional intelligence is about and how we lead our teams in transitions through corporate. And so it is the responsibility for corporate leaders to have more opportunities for these women to understand what that looks like so they can effectively lead the culture of the company.
And the impact of that emotional intelligence that you've seen as it's evolved from the old books that we used to read. In fact, some of the people that wrote them are on the Transformational Leadership Council with me. And I said, we got to transform from the Transformational Leadership Council if that's our idea of emotional intelligence. What impact does emotional intelligence have today?
Well, it brings a conflict resolution. It really does help having those discussions, right, with your team, with your upper management, being able to change that narrative, if you will. And so I would invite corporate leaders to really implement some of those training tools in corporate America to be able to shift. It's okay to pivot, right? The diversity that we have today in our work environment, it's massive. So as massive as it is, we still have a lot of work to do, and they just need to make the pivot.
If I can add one thing, I think where it's really going to help in entrepreneurship, but also in corporate, is women. The population, and we've talked about this a lot, is now majority women. Workforce is now majority of women. So now you have this
college and university,
right? Everywhere you go,
women.
it's majority of women, right? And so I think the real place for it, even in entrepreneurship, is teaching and guiding emerging leaders how to do leadership this, different
way,
in the right way, without it coming across. And back in the day, somebody would talk to you about this, right? oh, that's a weak leadership style. Well, actually, it's a really strong leadership style if you build leaders that agree with it, right? And so one of the things that when we're working with that group is really getting them to understand this isn't new, it's developing, and we have to get specifically women, but even men, to understand that collaboration and working together and coming up with a common goal. Let's strip the titles and let's find what our end has to be and where we want to take this business, whether it's your own personal or it's a company, and let's drive that way. When we have consensus, I think you'll find retention will be better. I think you'll find work-life balance will be better.
Engagement, especially, will be better,
Absolutely.
which is the misnomer.
And that's another issue that we have as women, right? We get to balance personal and business, right? And guess what? Our teams too. So we have a lot on our plate, right? And so our focus is not 100% without the tools to come, from managing our household to going into our corporate jobs and trying to climb the ladder, right? And see what we're going to do next, and have the time to learn how people's emotions. You're dealing with people's emotions, right? And empathy, it's okay. Being empathetic is absolutely okay. That was not allowed back then.
One of my core values, along with gratitude and accountability, which provides that inspiration, which both of you are providing to so many. Last question as we finish up. There's so many, when you live in this infinite loop, this abundant system that you guys have figured out, a different mindset, a different heart set, emotion, and of course the pragmatic dummy tax that we all have paid. What are you prioritizing today?
My compass is my value system. Okay. So I feel that, and we talk a lot about this, right? How our value system in ourselves are number one, and we are grounded. Nothing is going to rock our world. That I can assure you. It's one of those things that is our compass. That is how we live. That is our priority, and everything else falls into play because of it.
I think, to take that maybe down a different path, I think our primary focus is to help people. And whether that's working with the charities that we work with and the different nonprofits that we work with, you get to a point in life that you have what you need, right? And
Or we wouldn't be here.
right,
Yes.
right. And now what can I do to help other people, right? I mean, our children are on their trajectory of path as well. And I think while we're helping them in their way, we really want to give back, right? And that's why we co-chaired an event, and I guess our network helped them raise more money than they ever raised, right? But we did it with the idea of being entrepreneurs first, instead of doing it the way they've always did it. We messed it up a little bit. And now it's up to them to take that to the next level, right? And I think that's kind of what we focus on, is how do we shake the leaves a little bit, but yet remember who we are and what our core values are. And we've always been ones that were to give, but now I think we have a platform that we can do it amplified.
Well, from a third-party perspective, I certainly appreciate the community that you've built with BNN Services, with Trustedpreneur, with everything you're doing. It seems to be a community of like-minded, like-hearted, and like-handed people who really, truly want to help one another and know people that can help one another. And as you're proving, if you can build that type of community by doing well and doing good, it's a community of people that will buy from each other and sell for each other for life, which is a sustainable legacy, both personally and professionally. I want to congratulate both of you, David and Madeline Ricci. Thank you for joining me. This is David Meltzer with Office Hours.